Hi there. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Zeke Slipson, and I'm the founder of CodeWalker Institute. I'm making this video in order to just raise awareness about what we're doing. I'm going to start making regular videos that just talk kind of a little bit about what our experience is, what we've been doing, and some thoughts that I've had about different things that are going on in the world. Uh, so I'd like to start this first video just explaining a little bit about who I am and then talking about what CodeWalker is and how CodeWalker works. Um, so starting with who I am, like I said, my name is Zeke. Before starting CodeWalker, I was a software engineer. I worked in the Bay Area as a software engineer since 2006. Um, I worked mostly on web applications. For startups, I've worked for about 6 different companies of varying sizes. I've also done a lot of freelance work. I specifically like doing freelance work for nonprofits and social enterprises because I like working for companies where I feel like I'm making a difference in the world. Um, just a quick rundown of like some kind of technologies that I work with. I work with Node, I work with Angular, I work with React, I worked with Ruby, I worked with Python. Um, I really like Java, but I don't get to do a lot of Java programming. I've also done a ton of PHP programming, which I use when I do WordPress development. Uh, I know MySQL, Postgres, and I've done some work with MongoDB. Um, that's not all the things. There's a bunch more. Those are just kind of the main ones. So I'm pretty comfortable with diving into uh, a project where, maybe I don't know exactly the technology, but I know, enough about the pieces. Like I know JavaScript or I know Ruby or whatever, and that's usually enough to get me by. So let me tell you a little bit about CodeWalker. So about uh, 3 years ago, I was working at a pretty large company where I was the only black software engineer. And for the first time, it had always kind of bugged me, but this was the first time it really got to me because there were hundreds of engineers, and I was the only black one. And that really, like, I felt like there was something going wrong. Uh, and so I wanted to do something to fix that. So what I decided to do initially was I thought I was going to start a boot camp. So I started um, teaching some classes, reaching out to friends to see like who was interested in learning to code. Um, and I did that for a little bit. But while I was researching, I found as you may have guessed, there's already a lot of boot camps. So I started this around 2015. In 2013 is when there was a kind of like a coding boot camp boom, where a bunch of coding boot camps came to be. And so by 2015, they were already pretty established. They'd already, um, uh, some of them were already starting to fail. And so it was kind of a tough landscape to dive into. But what I found was that a lot of the boot camps offered some kind of uh, scholarship or financial aid for people of color uh, and also women. Uh, and so what I decided to do was to reach out to those folks and see how they were doing, like how, after getting that scholarship and getting that opportunity and that training, like how good was the training and what were they able to get jobs with it? And what I found was that majority of them had learned the skills and they were excited and thought, now I'm going to get a job, but weren't able to find work. And actually, some of them had been through multiple boot camps. So there's some where like the boot camp was really simple and it taught them some basics, but it really was, and they realized it wasn't enough. So they went to another one and some more stuff, and that's really what got them ready to code to become a developer. Um, but they still struggle to find work. So a lot of them were still going back to, retail jobs, um, in order to make ends meet. And so having a resume that just says, I worked at, whatever retail company doesn't look great on a resume when you're trying to apply a job as a software engineer. Uh, so I decided I was also doing freelance work at the time, and actually, there's some percentage of the work that I do that's pretty simple. Like as a senior engineer, it's not hard for me to do, and it's definitely something that I could give to a junior engineer who would be less experienced, would be more interested in tackling this problem. And so I brought some. So I decided to bring on some of these folks that I talked to as apprentices to work with me on the projects that I was working on as a way to give them experience and to help them gain confidence. Because that was one of the other, well, we'll get into that later, but so let me actually first step back and explain the apprenticeship program. So uh, initially it was pretty informal. I was just sort of like, hey, do you want to work on this with me? And they're like, yeah, that sounds cool. And we worked out like their rate of how much I paid them. It was based on a percentage of the project. Um, but since then, we've been doing this for about 2 years. We've kind of started to structure it a little bit more so that there's an onboarding process. We do interviews. We try to match people to projects that they have the best skills in. And so the way it works right now is we have an interview process where we do just an initial kind of information interviews just to see kind of like where they're at and what skills and if this makes sense, because sometimes they're not quite ready yet, and we'll tell them that, and they might go back and do another boot camp or something. Um, if they make it through that process, then the next step is to actually do a technical interview. The technical interview goes through a pretty wide range of things. We do a lot of vocabulary testing to make sure they understand the vocabulary they need to know to be able to do the work. And then also we do some coding challenges where they have to talk through kind of how they would solve a problem. And this assesses like how far along they are in the process and can help us give them feedback on like, do they need to go back and learn some more, or are they ready to actually do some of the work that we have. We are fully remote, so there's no main office. Everyone works from home. We convene every so once they come into the program, they will be assigned a mentor. That might be me. That might be another developer like me who's got experience, and they would meet with that mentor twice a week, and in a video chat format, and that gives them a chance to ask questions if they need clarification on something, show off their work, identify anything that's blocking them from continuing their work, um, and then also an opportunity for the mentor to give them feedback. Because one thing that's really important that we've learned so far is that apprentices they're starving for that feedback. They need to know like, am I doing this right, or like, am I thinking about this the right way? And getting that feedback from a mentor is super valuable. It also really boosts the apprentice's confidence, so that when they're going into interviews, they feel like they know what they're talking about. They're not like they don't feel like they're a fraud, because they've had this reinforced by a mentor who knows. Um, so as I mentioned, they meet twice a week. They get feedback not only on their technical abilities but also on their professional development. Because it's another piece of this that a lot of times gets left behind is actually talking about like, how do you communicate? How do you uh, you know are you communicating when things aren't going the way that you want, or if you don't understand something, are you able to talk through what the problem is? Are you able to use the different communication resources that we have? Like, for example, we use Slack, but we also use email. We also have a project management software that we use to track progress. So are they able to work within that framework? It's really valuable for them and for us as they move forward. We've also designed a level progression so that when they're working on a project, or when they're working on projects for us, part of the goal is for them to be progressing professionally. So initially, it's about uh, being a good individual contributor, but eventually the goal is if they stay with the program long enough, then they would actually we would want to convert them into a mentor. And this process wouldn't be short; it would be pretty long. But the idea is that we're kind of moving them towards becoming a leader. Uh, so far, we haven't had anyone stay that long. Most people uh, find other work within a year. This work is part time. It's not meant to be a destination. It's meant to be a stepping stone. It's meant to be something they come in, they work on for a little bit, and then they move on and they find another job. Um, and so, to that end, we've done a lot to structure the organization so that it is resilient, so that as people come and go, knowledge isn't lost. Someone else can pick up on a project and move on with it. A lot of that has to do with video production. So we produce videos that train them in the basics. We also produce videos that are specific to the projects that we're working on so that someone can come in and watch a few simple training videos that kind of set them up and get them ready to work on a project. Um, so yeah, so that's kind of in a nutshell what CodeWalker is. I hope that was informative. Uh, Thank you for taking the time to listen to me talk, even though my voice is not so great right now. And see you later.